Good evening and welcome to DarkHour Paranormal. I am your host tonight, Michael Roser. And this evening I have, once again, quite a treat for you guys. I have with me in the studio, Cindy Lee. And she's an experiencer, somebody who has been having experiences with dreaming, and someone who sees the shadow man. So we're going to have a lot of questions, and I think Cindy will have quite a few answers for us tonight in respect to what she's done, what she's seen, where she's been, and the people around her, what they've experienced as well with all of these topics involved. But very quickly and briefly here, I'd like to let you guys know how I came across and met Cindy Lee. During the summer, a good friend of mine decided that we wanted to have a Father's Day out at a campsite up in New Hampshire. And, you know, there's three of us and we all have kids, some of us multiple kids. So we took a Father's Day trip out and ended up going up to this campsite. It was really nice, very relaxing, fantastic campground. And let's see, it was a couple days later. We were just about to leave and my friend was going back up to the campsite to essentially make sure everything was good before we departed. And he brought the kids down to the playground and there were a bunch of them running around, as you would expect. And there was this wonderful woman hanging out there that apparently my friend got a chance to talk to very quickly. And she mentioned a few esoteric principles. And the way he described it, he kindly looked at her and said, well, I'm not really sure about this, but I do have somebody that would love to talk to you if you'd like to. And so she said yes. And he immediately came down to where I was in the parking lot and said, hey, listen, there's this incredible one up there who has these experiences. You should go talk to her. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, she's open to do that? Said, yeah, sure. Okay. So very quickly I went up and within some time there, I ended up talking to Cindy Lee and having a fantastic half-hour discussion, if not longer, about esoteric, shadow man, dreaming, life after death, and the whole gamut. So I'm very, very excited to have her here with us tonight to share her experiences, what she's done, again, where she's been, and perhaps where she's going. And if you guys have any questions as the broadcast continues on, as you know, please put your questions in capital letters, and I will do my best to respond and get on to that with you. All right. So without further ado, as we sometimes say here, I'm going to bring on Cindy Lee. Cindy, how are you this evening? Thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here, finally. Sorry it took a while.
No, we'll wait for eternity. That's not a problem. That's what we do here. How was your day? Let's start off simple. How was your day today?
It was a kind of Murphy's day. We had some internet problems today. And this rain is kind of dreary, but I guess it is what it is.
Yeah, much needed, I would say. Not that we're going in any sort of growing season, but we're supposed to get snow down here in Massachusetts tomorrow. It's a good 3 inches in Worcester. I mean, I remember that being something as a kid. You know, you have the pre-snow before Halloween and maybe even a white Thanksgiving, but I haven't seen that in years. So we'll have to see what happens. All right, so let's talk about you a little bit. Let's talk about your experiences and where I like to start folks off most of the time. And again, some of these things that we discussed tonight, you and I have already gone over, but you know, just for the sake of the audience here, where did your interest in the paranormal, in the esoterics, in the mystery of the world, the unexplained really start? Was there something in childhood that occurred, or was your family into that? Do you have a background that had supported spirituality or anything like that?
So the crazy thing is, where I grew up, it was in public housing, and there was a giant cemetery right behind us. And, you know, everybody who lived up there experienced something at some point. You know, and it was just things from things go missing. You heard your name called, you were the only one home, there was nobody there, you know, that sort of thing. But if you talk to anybody who grew up in that neighborhood, they'll tell you at some point something has happened to them. So that's kind of where it all started. But I also am 2 parts Native American.
Mm.
One of which is Apache, which we've been told somewhere down the line we are descendants of Geronimo. And then that's on my mother's side, but on my mother's father's side, and he actually traced this. We are Penobscot, and we are related to Chief Massawando from the Penobscot tribe.
Now, why is that significant? I mean, this is something maybe, again, we've talked about, but why is that significant when it comes to the paranormal or healing, let's say?
Because in Native American culture, they feel that they're one with the universe and in the world and the spirits, and they're just more in tune with things.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would think too. I mean, the indigenous people, as I've mentioned before on previous broadcasts, they are more in balance with their environment. I mean, you'd have to survive. And if you're there long enough, it's not just an element of physicality that you're dealing with. There's the spiritual side and perhaps the energies of the forest and maybe earth energies that you and I may not be so sensitive to driving in our cars to work every day in a city or suburban area,
Right.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to ask you that.
By all means. As a kid, it wasn't just me. My brother and sister, had things happen to them as well. And, we remember telling our parents and, them always brushing it off or trying to explain it away. Until there was a time when I was about, I don't know, 17 or 18 years old. And my mom called me panicking one day, because she could have sworn that I was in the house and I was downstairs yelling for her, and she yelling back, but I just kept yelling for her. And then she went looking around the home, and nobody was there but her. So, she, for the first time, explained that. And, I always tried to tell her, well, we've been trying to tell you for quite some time and you haven't listened. So, I mean, I don't know what you
Especially some people, it takes more time to accept that that's a possibility, because for some, you have to get over the belief that it's not real to understand that it is real. But then you have sort of an opposite end of the spectrum, where I had a guest named Patrick Vaughn who deals with Bigfoot. All right, this individual is so convinced that Bigfoot exists. He's not out there talking about whether it exists or not. He's out there saying, if you go into the woods, you have to be aware of this so that you are safe. Forget about whether you believe it or not. You need to exercise the caution in order to embark even in this, somewhere like the woods to go hunting. Again, it takes people sometimes a little bit longer, I think, to allow that to be the reality that it actually already is. So what happened at that point? Did she start accepting it more, or was she curious? Did she become fearful? What happened?
So she kind of got into this Bible study thing with a friend of
Okay.
hers.
Okay.
And the friend claimed to be a born again Christian. However, the church that she was involved in kind of seemed to be more of a evangelical thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she had convinced my mom that there are no such thing as ghosts, and they're 100% demons.
Oh no. That's unfortunate, though. I mean, it really is, because we hear this a lot.
I don't think my mother actually believed that either. I think she just didn't want to admit anything, to be honest. I mean, she's not here anymore, so I can't ask her, but I seriously questioned it so many times.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to wonder.
Tell you the same stuff. I mean, why would you not? Why would you try to listen?
Sometimes the experience is not overwhelming enough at least this is what I've found. It's not overwhelming enough for somebody to make that drastic change. Sometimes folks would rather just kind of deal with it and maybe put it in the back, know that it's there, but try their best to just ignore it because, again, maybe it doesn't fit into what they know, doesn't fit into their understanding of reality to start, you know?
Well, this is also coming from a woman who exposed me to horror movies at 4 years old. And that was our thing. So you can see where it doesn't.
That's so funny. That's sort of contrapuntal in a way, but that's funny. I get it though. I do get it. You know,
Yeah.
maybe the curiosity was always there, but you know, then you start talking about real life hauntings and stuff like that. It becomes more real. I think. I'll be honest with you. I'm more apprehensive to step into an incredibly haunted location where, you know, it's been reported that there are negative entities than I would be sitting through the worst horror movie somebody could, you know, throw at me. I can't say that would be the case for everybody, but you know, that's that's okay. Okay, so again, so this happened with your mother, and you know, you tried to convince her that hey, this has been happening for a long time. So essentially, you got into this because you were already experiencing things. Was there a point that you decided to turn around from the experiential aspect of it and say, "What is this?" and actively begin to research possibilities?
Probably somewhere in my preteens. You know,
That's early.
that's when, you know, a lot of like you know, ghost hunter shows and stuff were starting to come around, early 90s,
Mm-hmm.
mid 90s. Um, you know, and it was always an interest, but like I am also a firm believer that there are other things that we can't explain, and maybe we're not supposed to be able to explain it. I don't know. But I think with recent events in the world, 2020 started to prove to us that there are things that are happening in this universe that we can't control, and there is something bigger going on. And I think people really need to open their eyes right now.
What are your thoughts on the Earth and its consciousness shifting? And I'll kind of rephrase that a little bit in more of a grounded sense. There are pole shifts that occur, which I'm sure you're aware of, or that have occurred in the past. And since 1987, I believe there was an energetic window that opened up under the guise of 1111. And that continued until I think about 2012 or so. And the whole point of that was that there was an influx of energy that was available to us at a higher vibration because of the Earth shifting its consciousness in one way or another, or again, being in relation to these pole shifts. Do you think that, wow, I think I just lost my whole question, my whole train of thought. Wow. Sorry. This will happen occasionally. We'll come back to that in a respect. Damn it, that was good. That was a good one too. Okay, all right, sorry. So I'll kind of lessen it and come off on something. I'll branch out on that. So there was this window and there was this pole shift. So what are your thoughts on this change that's happening now? Do you think that we're actually at a point where the rocks are falling downhill, so to speak, in a progressive sense? Maybe from, you know, back when I mentioned to now, we're seeing the momentum build. Nothing's really leveling off. Everything seems to be building right from 2019 to 2020. Do you have any thoughts on a global pole shift or a broadening of collective consciousness dealing with the Earth?
So to be honest with you, after recent events that have not only happened in the world, but in my life in particular, you know, I was never one to be super religious. However, I do feel there is something greater going on right now. And I do feel that if the end of times are correct, I feel we are heading that direction very fast.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's a relationship between more paranormal sightings or esoteric principles coming to the surface as a result of this, or do you think that might have been people's curiosity during quarantine, just researching, or perhaps spending too much time in one area?
So when you think to how many people, when it comes, age-wise, who have passed of COVID, right?
Hmm.
The majority of them were elderly. Now, I know that it affects them differently, but I've also lost people recently who were just becoming elderly, and it was not COVID. It
Hmm.
was completely unexplained. And the crazy thing is, I keep seeing it happen more and more, but not just to me, but it's happened to my friends. Um, it's happening to, extended family members. Um, there's definitely, so if we were to say that God was real and, the rapture would be real, it's almost like he's starting to pull them now.
Hmm. It would look that way.
Yeah. I
Interesting.
mean, recent events have really, really made my mind think about things lately.
Well, if nothing else, I think that this whole 2020, everything about it, every element in there, obviously COVID being at the top, okay, we're all going through some kind of very dramatic shift, and everybody's sort of taking it their own way. There's a collectiveness about it, but each person has dealt with the isolation of the lockdown differently. Some have made it a creative space, some have kind of deepened into perhaps a depression they didn't realize that they were already sort of fostering. There's lots of different ways that people are experiencing this time, but more than I have seen in my lifetime, in the 39 years I've been alive, this has been the most pivotal of times. It feels like it's just pushing everybody in some direction. I guess the question is, will it be positive or will it be negative for us? That's the
Right.
question.
What side are you going to end up on?
Mhm.
Kind of thing, in everything I've ever been taught, to be honest. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's a very interesting time to be alive, and I believe that we've all had some sort of idea of what we were doing when we decided to incarnate the way that we did, and there must be opportunity for here for us to grow in one way, shape, or form. And I do hope that that's where we go. And I want to remind people too. I mean, this is the simplest concept under the sun. It's up to us, right? It's up to us individually, which way we choose to go. Now, you can have everything in front of you. Believe me, I have a whole bunch of bullshit in front of me every single day, guys, just like you do. Okay, but it's how you're going to deal with that and how you're going to make that a consistent mindset. Sorry, I don't mean to diverge too much. I just like what you said.
No,
You said there.
by all
Uh,
means.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll move on to the next question. And this sort of deals with your background a little bit. And insofar as you've already mentioned that you are a descendant of Geronimo and that Apache tribe, the way that I've kind of structured this, I meant to ask you, you've mentioned that you're a descendant of Geronimo, and he's a medicine man and a leader of the Apache tribe. Those are two big things that I'm going to ask you about. Do you think this has significance in relation to your personal paranormal experiences throughout life? So not only is it enough for, let's say, Native Americans who are in tune with the earth, they're dealing with what they're dealing with during their lifetime. Is there an energy or some sort of magic? And I could reference, I think why I believe this might be the case. Is there something that's passed along through generation that's perhaps stronger because it's cultivated by the Native American people?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about cells hold memory, right?
Yes.
Cells are in your DNA, which is also memory, which is passed down the generations because it's in the DNA. So I believe that there could be a connection from our ancestors. But I also believe it's up to the person to be able to want to tap into that as well.
That's a big one. That's a big one. Now, Geronimo being from what I've understood, primarily centered in medicine and, being a leader, holding that strong poise. Do you feel that in your particular case, in your family, any of those two, either of those two aspects have filtered down stronger than others? Do you feel more drawn to medicine, plants, and so forth? Or do you feel you're more of drawn to a leader? I mean, do you understand what I'm trying to ask you? I'm sorry. It's a little convoluted.
I absolutely do. And that's actually a great question because so I used to be a PCA for the elderly until I was injured in an accident and I just can't work in that field anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My mother worked as a phlebotomist and an EKG technician.
Oh, wow.
And we have had military men and nurses, my sister is currently, well, she is a vet tech by trade, but she works for the IDEX lab now.
Oh,
But she's
wow.
still in the medicine field. So, I mean, yeah, I guess like in the men, there's kind of that warrior side, and in the females, there's more that healing nurture side.
That is so cool. That is so cool because again, and I'd sound like a broken record to some of you. It's about consistencies. It's about consistencies, and that's what I'm looking for when I do my research and when I talk to people. That's what I hope to see reflected. That's so cool. I have one question from the chat here, a little off topic, but it's one that I adore. Ben Crabble wants to know if you have any opinion on the hollow Earth theory.
That's quite an interesting.
Oh, it's a rabbit hole for sure, isn't it?
It definitely is. And believe me, recently I've gone down some dark rabbit holes I wish I did not. Oh yes. Oh
Dark's
yes.
not so good, favorable, I should say.
Well, yeah, that whole Pizzagate thing, it's something else, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I to be honest, I'm not so sure about that one.
What about the moon? Let me throw something else in there. What about the moon? Do you think that's hollow, or do you think that's a stable, solid structure? Celestial body.
To be honest, I'm starting to wonder if it is a satellite installation.
Yeah, so are we.
I've heard this theory that it's a satellite and there's multiple colonies living on there.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, I love the paranormal so much that I read things, I watch documentaries, I watch, mockumentaries.
Sure.
And I've been doing it as young as I could remember. So there's lots of things I've come across that I've been like, okay, that makes sense. And then there's other things I've come across that I've really been like, I don't know. And the hollow Earth, I'm not so sure. But if there are reptilian aliens living under our Earth, then I guess hollow Earth makes sense.
I've always kind of believed, well, actually, I've gone back and forth many times when it comes to a hollow Earth theory. As much as I'd like to see a central sun in the middle of the Earth, warming up, parts of the interior, that's a completely different ecosystem and world. I don't know how real that is today. What was it? Agartha, I think, Tibetan. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong. There is a group of monks. Okay, I believe they're Tibetan that believe in a place called Agartha, which I believe is in the Himalayan mountains. Mount Shasta. God, I'm butchering this here, but my point is that this used to be a physical place that they would go and visit at a certain point in their development as a spiritual being and a monk. And over time, it became a non-physical place. Now, there's still a physical component that's in that space, but it doesn't look like what you would imagine Agartha as the place that it was to be, because it actually shifted into another overtone. And in order to access that, you have to be vibrating yourself at a specific rate, which they achieve through meditation and other disciplines. I think that if nothing else, there's a culmination of that sort of space existing, along with maybe these really deep, deep caverns within the earth. I mean, I don't even think the earth has to necessarily be hollow to harbor some sort of extraterrestrial life. It just has to be deep enough that we can't fucking get there. You know what I
Well,
mean?
we already know that there's massive underground tunnels all over the world. You know what I mean? There's the catacombs in Paris.
Oh
You know
God,
what I mean?
yes. Couldn't pay me any amount of money to get in there. I'm just telling you, I'm too claustrophobic. That's the only reason. It's not the ghosts. It's or whatever's down there that scares me. It's the claustrophobia. I can't do it.
I agree with that.
Christ almighty. Let's talk about your Shadow Man experiences a little bit, because this is something that we got in depth with when we spoke personally. Do you think Shadow Man is a single entity, or do they exist collectively? And I'm sorry, as soon as I started reading that question, I realized that I should probably ask you what your experience with the Shadow Man is so that everybody else knows. So disregard that question for the moment and just tell us a little bit about how this came to be that you've seen Shadow Man, it's around you, or it isn't, you've interacted with him or you haven't. Who else is it affected in your family and those around you?
So it's a recent thing. In June, my great aunt had passed away. And then in July, my mother's father passed away. And then to the month to the day, okay, a month later, my father passes away. So, and on that same day that my father passes away, I find out that my cousin's uncle passes away the same way my father does, same day.
Jesus.
Right.
My God.
Went to bed, 60 years old, didn't wake up. So completely unexpected, you know. They weren't COVID really. Well, my great aunt was elderly, but she was asymptomatic for COVID. But my grandfather, who was well respected, decorated military man, ex Secret Service, has a fall at home. Admitted, find out July. So after July 23rd, we're all trying to comprehend what has just happened with my grandfather, and you know how this happens to a guy who doesn't deserve it, how wasn't caught prior, XYZ. August 23rd, my father goes to bed and doesn't wake up. Same night as my cousin's uncle. So, you know, after my father had passed, the day prior that we found out. So what had happened was, I had spoken to him that Friday night via text message, and we were supposed to meet up with him the following morning to go visit my sister, who had just bought a house out in Western Mass. We were going for her housewarming party. And my dad had said, I had a rotten day. I'm going to bed. Call me at 8 in the morning. So that whole day was spent of me, my sister, my grandmother, who was my mother's mother, so his mother-in-law, all these people just calling him and texting all day non-stop with no response. And that's not like him. So after I went by my grandfather's house, because we kind of inherited. There you are.
It freezes once in a
while.
We'll go through it. Oh yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, perfect. So we went by the house to go check on it, and as soon as we got out of the car, there was this little tiny brown and white bunny right next to the front tire of our car. And we get out of the car, me, my husband, and my 2 kids, and it doesn't move. It just sits there. So we start inching a little bit closer, and it still doesn't move. And we're like, oh my God, this is so weird. So eventually we get a little bit closer and he finally takes off. But it was weird that it took, that long. So we thought that was weird. And the next day, that night, I didn't sleep. I had this feeling in the pit of my stomach. I just knew. I knew it. I knew something was wrong. I knew he was gone. I knew he had passed. And a little backstory on that is my whole life, I've always known things without knowing how I
Yep.
know them. And it saved my life quite a few times, actually, from some serious. I knew it in the pit of my stomach. And up that morning, and me and my sister, no one had still heard from him. And I said, to be honest with you, I'm afraid to go check on him because the last time I checked on a parent, which was our mother, I found her had died almost 9 years ago. And I said, I'm a little afraid to go and walk in and find this again. And she said, don't do it. Call the police and do a wellness check.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my dad was a very old school Roman Catholic Irish man. You don't do that kind of thing. Very big on the respect factor. And so I said, listen, I know I should, but I don't want to do it and have him like hate me forever. And she said, I would rather him hate me forever than not know he's okay. So I called the police and they called me back and they said, well, they're working on him. However, it looks like he's been gone for a while. Come to the house.
Oh, man.
So we all take off. It's a few cities away. So yeah, he had passed. So we were waiting for the examiner's office to come and whatnot. And we're all sitting out front. And what comes running directly at us? Well, directly towards my husband, actually, from the backyard, is a little brown and white bunny.
No kidding. You gotta be kidding me. All right, there's no, I mean, it's not coincidence.
Can I just tell you the amount of that particular colored bunny I keep seeing? And it's the weirdest thing.
So it's
And they don't
reoccurring.
Yes.
Wow.
I told you some really weird stuff has been happening.
Well, that's also very beautiful too, because I think, I would interpret that, I think the way that you're probably interpreting this. And if you're in tune with synchronicity and you pay attention to this sort of thing, you'll notice the relationship between the two here, the bunny and, perhaps your father. It's, this is what spirit does. This is what spirit does. And nobody's paying attention half the time. And they're too, caught up in whatever's going on with them, which believe me, I get it. I understand. I'm one of you guys too. We're all the same. But we're missing those signs where, for example, you could be grieving a relative or, a friend. And while you're grieving, you're missing the fact that they're standing right next to you in one way, shape, or form. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
There were weird things that started happening after my mom had passed 9.5 years ago. And it started with something that my son had said, which still floors me to this day. He's 13 now. He was like 6 or 7 then. And we had just moved in with my dad. And it was probably a year after she had passed. And we lived on the 3rd floor. And you had to turn on the light to come up the stairs because there was no windows in the stairwell.
Mm-hmm.
And one night we were sitting at the kitchen table and you walk up into the kitchen and we swear to God, we heard his boots coming up those. I said, nobody, don't move because the light didn't come on. I don't think it's Papa.
Well,
and we swore we heard the keys go in the door and come on. So after we hear the final footsteps, he turns and looks at me and says, don't worry, Mama. It's just Grandma. She won't hurt you.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. when a kid says it,
Where
when a
did that
child
come?
says it.
Right. Lord, still floored to this day. And anytime I ever took on his birthday, I usually take like a birthday video where I sing to him and make it goofy. Every
Mhm.
time I take a video, there's all these little orbs and lights floating all around him, all through. And they're not just, it's not dust because they're not floating. I'm talking, they're zipping and moving and changing directions.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a big difference when we're looking at dust as compared to orbs. There's a huge difference. I would love to see that video or some of the video you have one of these days. Well, yeah, I mean,
They're on my,
I'm sorry, say that again?
they're on my Facebook.
Oh, well, hell, I'll go and check those out after the show. Well, thank you. I didn't know that. I would have had those for some evidence.
They might have to scroll a few years back, but they're there.
No, I'll find them. Don't worry, I'll find them. We had another guest who has had an ongoing experience where he was abducted around 14 years of age. And long story short, he spent a lot of time keeping that within him. And very, very recently this year decided to share a story. In doing that, he's been videotaping his living room and other areas of his house because he was wondering if this was still occurring to him. And instead of seeing aliens, creep in to grab him, he's catching all these strange anomalies with orbs all over the place. And, he's got a couple that the figures are coming out, faces and so forth. But a lot of people said, well, it's dust at first. Now, one thing I'll tell you about this guy is he's actually physically allergic to dust. When he touches it, he tells me his hands swell up. So he's always cleaning the room. Even when he's talking to people, on the phone or through this, he's in there, he's cleaning the room. So, sometimes it actually is energy. It's not just dust.
Right.
So,
and if you zoom in, I mean, you can clearly see the difference.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. The makeup is different, and depending on what you're using for camera and so forth, you could see it more clearly or not. So in relation to Shadow Man, you said this is something recent, and perhaps this came about as all of this sort of came down in such a short period of time in terms of losing your family members. Do you think that there's a relationship to the how do I want to say this? The amount of folks who have passed away in such a short period of time that Shadow Man would come around? Or do you think Shadow Man might be just attracted to the event as it is, something impersonal to him, just the event of passing over? Or do you think that the attraction for seeing the Shadow Man is something else?
So that's something I'm still trying to figure out, because he literally didn't show up until my dad died. And it started in my bedroom. And at first, I really thought like I was hallucinating. I was out of it. I was out of my mind. But I'm telling you, I know what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And I saw in the corner by my door over here next to me. Now, there are things that are black and they're hanging. However, this was much bigger. We're talking 7.5 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
And very big, stocky, wide, broad shoulders. And he was wearing this hat. So you ever see those old like Amish preacher style hats?
Yes. I can picture that.
That's what it looked like. However, it was 100% solid, dark black mass. And that was the first.
Yep, go ahead.
That was the first time.
That was the first time.
Anytime after that, though, there hasn't been a hat, which is weird. Mm-hmm.
Does it feel like the same one energetically? I mean, that's sort of a stretch to ask, maybe, because I wanted to know if when you first saw it, did you feel masculinity off of it, or was it just the visual that made you think it was a masculine form?
So the first time I was actually quite scared.
Mhm.
Because I have heard all of these stories before, and I had always kind of questioned what it could be, like, interdimensional, or spirits, or whatever the case may be. I'm still a little unsure of it myself. However, that first night, I was pretty terrified, to be
No.
honest.
Sure.
Um, and then, the following days, my dad's funeral, and then he rented an apartment, so we had to clear out the whole apartment very quickly so that the
Mhm.
landlord could reclaim the space. Um, and it was then that we were cleaning out the house that I kept seeing this, like, black shadow peeking around the corners at me, always out of the
Mhm.
corner of my eye, but
Mhm.
I knew I not only see it, but I could feel it. And
That's what I was gonna ask you.
it's that intense feeling of someone is watching me.
So, did you feel it before you saw it, or did you see it first?
The goose,
Yeah.
it kind of happened at the same time, to be honest. Um, and then, every time I go to look at him directly, he's gone.
Jesus, how many? So that was. So you
But as
described
his,
one. Sorry, go ahead. The lag is there. I apologize. Go ahead.
no, 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 go ahead, go ahead.
So you mentioned there was how many times in total would you say you've seen the Shadow Man?
Well, it went from at least a couple of times a day in the beginning to now it's every once in a while.
Oh
But the
wow.
weird connection that has come about recently, who isn't, he's sort of a skeptic,
Hmm.
um, say. He seems to have been experiencing a ton of deja vu. And he will come home and he will say, "Oh my God, I had deja vu today." And I look at him and I go, and it seems to be now I see him on the days that he has deja vu.
Hmm.
Isn't that weird?
That's very strange.
We're
What do you
pretty
think?
baffled by.
What do you think deja vu is? I know there's a lot of theories out there, a lot of speculation. In your opinion, what do you think deja vu is?
To be honest, I don't know, but I have recently, so when I said a lot has been happening, I've been reliving a lot of my memories throughout my life very vividly in my dreams. However,
Yeah.
it's in a third party kind of way where, like, I'm me as an adult standing in the background watching it all happen.
Oh, what the hell? That's like a
So
life review almost.
it's I can tell you it's definitely taken a toll in here right now.
Mhm, mhm,
um, However, I'm starting to wonder if, so they talk about self in astral projection and whatnot, right?
mhm,
That you can, like, step outside of yourself.
mhm.
I'm starting to wonder if what it is. It's like you're projecting yourself out for a moment.
Are you waking up extremely tired, like you didn't feel like you slept?
Um, I'm always tired.
I mean, the reason I ask that is because it's been a very discernible trait with people who travel inadvertently when they're trying to actually go to sleep. They're traveling and they're not actually sleeping. So sometimes when they come back into the body after all that travel, they just haven't slept and they got to get up in 5 minutes for the alarm. So they wake up feeling more tired than they went to bed. I've noticed that in some of my experiences where I know I've traveled, I've woken up like, oh my God, I feel like I'm ready to go to sleep. Are you feeling any of that? Do you think that it's related to that? Because that's something big.
Well, this is something that I've recently started to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And, now that I think back, my whole life, I dream every night. And every night I dream, it is so vivid that I have woken up the next day and called people and said, did this really happen? Did we have this conversation? To find out it never happened. It was just a dream, but it was so real,
Jesus.
And ever since I was about 15 years old, I've had really bad insomnia problems. Getting to sleep is a problem. Staying asleep can be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have a special thing that I have now that helps me go to sleep and stay asleep now.
Good. Because I mean, God, for somebody who doesn't sleep, that's the first thing I notice. Any sort of spiritual interruption might jump on is sleep. Because if we don't sleep, we're fucked. Same thing as if you don't eat. These very natural, basic survival elements that these malicious energies will attack first, or you'll deplete those creative energies first. I think when you're using something as heavy as astral projection or something, again, it doesn't always have to be a negative thing, but it's the balance. But yeah, man, you got to have that rest. You got to have that rest. So with your dreams, as we start going to this, what's here? I do have a question on that one here. Let me bring it up for you real quick here. And I really just write these down for my own reference most of the time. But I've been thinking a few things since I last talked to you. So, okay. So when you're reliving your life through dreams, are you remembering exactly who you were in waking life at that time as you're watching this? The way you described, is this exactly who you were? Do you remember the emotions and the conversations that go through with specifically talking about your reliving life in these dreams? Or are there variances as dreams sometimes present, some nonsense mixed into the recollection?
So it's very strange because it's pretty much it's a mashup, all squished into one, of every single apartment or place I've ever lived, including my old campground, my grandparents' houses, all mashed into one area. So like you could be in one room and it's, my old apartment down the street here. And then you walk into another room and it's, the apartment that I lived in when I was 14. But the thing is, everyone is there and everyone is alive. Like no one has ever passed. But I'm an adult and my kids are here as well.
Me?
So,
Huh.
yeah. So like so let me just tell you, I have 7 years on my brother. And I have 10 years on my sister. My loves are 9.5 years apart as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a brother, and then after a brother, I have a sister. Now my kids, I have a boy, and then I had a girl. Okay. So a lot of times in these
Hold on 1 second. You cut out there, Cindy.
Weird,
I'm sorry.
right?
Do you mind just repeating that? I'm sorry. I didn't catch that, what you had mentioned.
So I said, oftentimes, my kids in the dream take the place of my brother or sister in those memories.
Oh.
But they're memories that have definitely happened, places we've definitely been, exact conversations. Yeah, it's very odd.
To me, that almost sounds like you're slipping into some sort of alternate dimension. And I don't mean that necessarily within the third dimensional vibration, these overtones. It definitely sounds like traveling to me. and certainly sounds like you're somewhere else where everybody can convene on that vibration. There's many times I've had dreams where a family member or deceased pet would come in, and it was literally like they never left. And they're, as so often we do sometimes in dreams, we look at that person at first like, oh, hey, how you doing, uncle? It's good to see you. And they, wait a minute, you're alive? And it's just this commonplace. Yeah, I'm still here. Oh, okay. Hey, how's it going? You don't really process that, when you're in that space. That's just my thought on maybe what you're going through there. But that can be a very positive thing as long as you're allowed to get a little sleep sometimes. You know what I mean?
Well, the problem is that everything is so vivid. I wake up, and throughout the whole day, I will start to remember the whole dream in bits and
Ah,
pieces throughout the day. That's how vivid it is. One thing could happen, and I could go, "Oh, boom!
oh,
I
wow.
remember that whole part of that dream now." But it's
Well,
a
that's
daily
curious too,
thing.
because I know a lot of people, myself included, have difficulty remembering their dreams after they wake. And maybe we get a trigger throughout the day that we remember this small sliver of what we experienced the night before, but very rarely does it blossom up the rest and open up the rest of the dream that we had, that wiggle in with that one sliver. That's very interesting. And I'm curious even if there's something with cellular memory happening for you where you're actually aware of that on an unconscious level and it's starting to filter into your everyday. That's just, I've never heard of that before. So this is really fascinating for me.
Like I said, weird things, man.
No, this is just so
You know,
cool.
I
It's
researched about it. I mean, I researched about it a lot because, I was so curious as to what was going on with me myself,
Mhm.
specifically. But then, you always feel like you can't talk to people about it because they're going to look at you funny, or they're going to think
Of
you're
course.
crazy. But to be honest with you, I think they're crazy.
Yeah, between you and I and everybody else on the internet, I agree with you. Believe me, that's you'd have to be kind of silly not to look into these things. The thing is, too, again, the distraction that people have in life is just it's overwhelming. If you're only worried about survival, if you're in a place in life where you're struggling to simply get the necessities that you need, and I've been there. Okay, all I could think about was what the fuck I was doing next. Where was my next meal coming from? How was I doing this? How was I doing that? That was what I thought about. And I recall at a point, and this has happened for, many different traumas I've had in my life where it just kind of weighed down. As soon as you lift that up, as soon as you clear that, as soon as you heal that, as soon as you move out of that mentality, out of that place in life, all of a sudden it's like this other part of your mind opens up and I'm starting to think about esoterics again or have these, questions of, whatever it is, or I'm researching something of interest. You start getting that creativity back. And when you talk about people understanding what's going on around them in an esoteric sense or a spiritual sense, a lot of times, again, this belief is peppered in there too, but they have all these distractions and physical barriers, so to speak, that really keep them from seeing what's already there. It's a very interesting thing. And of course, people will open up as they're ready to sort of investigate that. And that may be associated with soul development and so forth. I don't know. But that's very intriguing, to say the least, that you're having these dreams and they're coming out the way they are in your waking life. That's special and something I would encourage you to watch. Not that you couldn't, but I'd encourage you to watch it. I have a question from the chat here, again, involving Shadow Man. Wreaking Havoc asks, does she have a theory on why shadow people I'm sorry. Does she have a theory on why shadow people peek at us but do not want us to see them? What are they doing? And I think what he's asking is, why are they so elusive? And do you know what they're doing?
That is to literally at times, I saw you. I know you peeking and you don't want me to see you, but I saw you. What do you want? you know?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
But I've heard so many different theories on, what it could be. So that's something that I would like to learn an answer to myself, because I was in this room last night putting my 4-year-old to sleep, and, and we had the TV on over here in the corner, and she rolled and faced the door, and she started hysterically crying.
Hmm.
And uh,
Hang on, guys.
you rolled
Hang
that
on.
I
I'm sorry. Hang on one second, Cindy. I didn't catch that. You kind of broke out for a moment, so I'm going to ask you to repeat it. We ended off there at she rolled over and began crying hysterically.
sorry, it was my Wi-Fi. Can you hear me now?
It's okay. Yes, I can.
So I asked her what was wrong. She bring her kicking, and I'm like, why are you crying at the door? And I said, Harley, what's wrong? And she said, saw the big man in the corner. It was that big. So
Did she say that he had a hat on, or did she see it without the hat? Hmm. I'm sorry, Cindy. You're frozen for the moment here. If you can hear me, we're gonna wait for you to return. Can you hear me now?
I can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I
Okay.
had to data because my Wi-Fi, the rain is knocking out my Wi-Fi signal.
That's fine. I mean, listen, we've worked with much more difficult circumstances than a little lag here and there. So I apologize to ask you again to just repeat it. Now we're at the point where she's telling you what she saw.
So she told me she was afraid of the big man in the corner.
Hmm.
And the last time there was a big man in the corner, I saw that big 7.5 foot tall shadow. And she's going to be 4 in December. Children just can't make that kind of stuff.
I don't see why they would.
Well, especially to that extent. So, I turned the light on. She said he was gone. But the crazy thing is, whatever she saw, I didn't.
Well, that's something interesting too, because there are many reports of people who are standing side by side. One witnesses a phenomenon, and the other one sees absolutely nothing. You find this a lot, even with UFO sightings, where somebody's watching a UFO in the sky, and the guy standing next to him doesn't see a thing. That's really interesting, because also there's a possibility that whatever that entity is, it has the ability to only show itself to particular people, or whatever it wants to show itself to. Did she describe him having the hat, or did you guys not talk about that? I'm just kind of curious if she had seen that.
I didn't get into it with her
Yeah.
because at that moment she was upset. So I just wanted to calm her and reassure her,
Absolutely. I understand that. I wondered if she might have said anything about detail. I would have handled it the exact same way as you did, in respect to my kids as well. I don't see why a child would make something up that is so fear-based. Maybe something extraordinary, maybe something very imaginary. But very rarely will a child make up something that puts them in danger, or gives them a sense of fear. So, it's
Well,
definitely worth listening to.
she's my no fear child. So it's not like her to be she's almost 4 years old, and she's already been trying to watch horror movies with me. She's not even fazed by them. So
That is funny. That is funny. Like mom, like daughter. Oh, that's hilarious. I mean, that's a good smile because again, when this sort of thing affects children, it concerns us as parents the most. We want to protect our kids, and yet we understand in the same respect that they have their own experiences. That if our parents had protected us from everything in the world, we wouldn't know anything. So we have to straddle that fine line of allowing them to have their experiences and yet protect them to the fullest. Has the shadow man appeared to anybody else in your family?
not to my knowledge.
Has your husband experienced anything along these lines, or is it just yourself and your daughter?
So he has been experiencing the deja vu almost on a daily basis,
That's just so weird to me. That's so crazy.
where he swears to God, this has happened before. I've been in this moment exactly like this several times.
For it to happen with such frequency, that's always a reason to look a little deeper, as deep as you can, into something like this. That's just that's incredible, and I really wonder what it means, considering everything that's going on with you and everything that has gone on around you and your family. There's clearly a transition occurring here in one way or another. It's just a matter of putting your thumb on exactly what it is. Um, do you think that Shadow Man is of the spirit realm, or do you think maybe from another dimension entirely? And the reason I'm asking you that is because a lot of times when people see shadow people, it's similar to the way you're describing. It's just not as menacing. So, for example, out of the corner of your eye, you see the flicker, and you look over, and that image is gone. But for a very split, fleeting moment, you did see the image, and it's a shadow. It's very dark. I've seen three stand together at once. So it appeared to be a family. It was a man wearing an old period time hat from the 30s. There was a woman standing there with the same garb. She was it would look to be some sort of housewife. And then there was a little one, at least one of them that I saw. And I feel like there was one around the corner, but when they were out in the door, they were standing there. Now, when I looked over at them, I actually saw them I had retention of them for probably a good 2 seconds, which is a lot longer than we normally see them. And the feeling I got off of them, I was moving into a new house, which happened to be very old, was, who's this guy? What are you doing? Are you coming here? And it was sort of like just kind of looking in. Do you feel that there's any of that inquisitiveness with the one that you're encountering, or do you feel that there's something more to him considering his size and perhaps the menacing atmosphere that he brings along with him?
So it was only that one time that there was that size hat.
Hmm.
Any after that, there were no features, no clothes features, no hat, just the shape of a human.
Hmm.
Um, and I kind of feel as if, so with thinking of everything that's happened recently, I'm starting to feel like there is some kind of really important message that I'm supposed to understand, but I'm totally not understanding it.
That's a very curious interpretation because I would say something along the same lines. I believe that everything happens for a reason. And when you see something like this occurring in your life, again, just like the synchronicities, there's something there for you to understand. Maybe about yourself, maybe about a past life, maybe a trauma that it's reflecting, but it's definitely there to give you a message. Now, again, with the weight of everything that's happened around you, there's such gravity to that. I would think because there are so many players in terms of events here that there's something culminated rather than just an individual or a specific focus on one person. So that's very curious. Now, have you ever experienced Shadow Man coming into dreams at all, or is it only in waking life that you've seen him?
So when I tell you that I dream so vividly,
Mhm.
I actually can remember several dreams from, throughout my life to this day. Um, And I'll never forget this one dream. I was probably about 17 or 18 years, and I was running through my old neighborhood. Um, and it was dark out, and there was this man chasing me, and he had no face. It was just a black face. He
Hmm.
had really long black hair. He had on a really long black trench coat, you know, all black clothes, combat boots, and he was just chasing me. And no matter how fast I ran, he was always within fingertips reach of me.
Mm.
And just as he was about to grab me, I woke up. And I've thought about that dream for so many years because I don't know why, but dreams don't really terrify me, but that one certainly did. And I don't know why, and I can't really explain it to this day, but I think about that dream a lot and what that may have meant, because I'm still baffled by it.
And it was only one time that you had a dream like that, right?
Yep.
Man, that's interesting. A lot of people do have these one-off sort of dreams that they remember their whole life, and or all their lives, I should say. And you know, it could take a lifetime to unravel something like that. But when we look back at certain dreams, when there's a fear associated or heavy emotion, I think we're more apt to be able to hook into it. But man, I wonder what those things are. I mean, when we're dreaming, as far as I can tell, there's sort of a free reign on both ends to experience. I can go off and do whatever my subconscious is choosing, and whatever's out there could notice me and perhaps try to interact. And I don't know what level that gets to, but again, this is just my speculation with it. Okay, so maybe, was he tall like Shadow Man? Or did he share similar features other than, what you mentioned there? I mean, the combat boots and stuff. That's really interesting.
So he kind of sort of looked like your average 90s teenage grunge kid.
Huh. Huh.
Um, you know, almost with like, the whole Jesus length hair going on kind of thing. And
I have no idea what you're talking about.
except his face was just black. It was just void. Nothing.
Do
So
you do you think you could be a sensitive, or do you consider yourself a sensitive at all?
so I can tell you that my whole life, not only have I known things without knowing how I know them, but I feel things. Like,
Hmm.
for instance, I have been able to walk into a place and say, I feel like I feel like there's probably a spirit here. I can't see them, I can't really hear them, I can't talk to them, but it's this feeling of like every hair on your body stands
Yeah.
once with these goosebumps. Um, and it's just again that really intense feeling of almost as if somebody is watching you, but they're not watching you. You're feeling their presence or their energy.
Mm. That's an interesting interpretation. A lot of times people think that there is a focus on them maybe being watched, but you're saying that it could be just the energy and the presence of the entity.
Could be, yeah.
I don't see why that wouldn't be the case. I mean, sometimes when you walk into a room and you can feel somebody even physically, that person can bring down an entire room energetically or do just the opposite. I would imagine that it might be a little more intense if all you're feeling is the energy, because that's what that particular one in front of you is comprised of. Um, Man,
To be honest,
fascinating.
I
Yep.
I also feel like a lot of it. Now, here's the crazy part. I have a feeling a lot of it has to do with my astrological sign too.
Why do you think that is?
I'm an Aquarius.
Okay. Why is that significant to what you're mentioning?
So the Aquarius is the water bearer.
Mhm.
And what that means is we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We put
Mm.
everyone ahead of us, we put ourselves last. We may seem like we're cold hearted and we may be very blunt in what we say. And we don't mean to be mean or cold hearted. It's more or less, we always have to take everything and push it down to be the strong ones because that's what we do. That's what our sign is. We're carrying that weight. Um, and it's just I feel astrologically it's built into me
Mhm.
along with my heritage as well. Like I was just built to be that strong person, even though I don't want to be at times. um it's just what life has doled out for me.
I've always thought that, well, as my guest Noreen used to say, she was a clairvoyant that was on the show. She used to always say, you don't get points for the fluffy stuff. And it does make sense that the soul would come into incarnation to experience the heavier things that perhaps in whatever dimension it comes from, you cannot experience that. Say, for example, duality. Perhaps where we originate is a whole, okay? And we decide to incarnate because that's one way to experience duality. So, what do you feel you have um a path with the spirituality and everything? I mean, you obviously and clearly feel the weight of everything that you've gone through on your shoulders. And when I met you, I could tell from the get go you were a very strong woman. Internally, you're a pillar. And that's just my own intuitive sense. And then obviously, as I started to talk to you, I was incredibly correct with that initial feeling. But that being said, we have tools, right? When we come in to, do whatever we're going to do or whatever the plan is. Okay. So that would make sense as to why you would come in as the person you are, to be the strong individual, to have these experiences, and perhaps why I have the voice I have that I can do radio or whatever it is. I mean, you're given the tools to do what you're supposed to be here to do. And there are many times, like you said, well, I don't always want to be that strong. Well, believe me, that's just part of the human experience, I think. And in describing all of this to you, I have completely, once again, forgotten my question. I at least was able to recount the last one. This one, I think, is off in the ethers. So if you're out there dreaming one night and you happen to see something floating along, let me know. We'll get back to it. I got a question for you here. Do you think there may be a connection between Shadow Man, or let's just say the Shadow Realm, okay, to talk about all those sightings, and the shamanic underworld?
You mean like shaman, like we're talking like Aztec ancient times?
We're talking ancient times where, well, even today, there are people who are able to go into that deep meditation where they go into the lower dimensions. And they used to, from my understanding, they used to do this a lot in shamanic practice. It was just part of, again, the balance. They would go up in vibration too, but your power animals are down there and so forth. But there's lower vibrations that can be worked with. Do you think that this could be from that sort of area? Maybe I'm asking the wrong question, but okay. Well, I'll put it this way: where do you think Shadow Man comes from, or the Shadow Realm? Where do you think that comes from?
That I don't know, but I want to think that he comes from the spirit world, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's the underworld or the higher world, I don't know, or maybe he's an in-betweener. um my brother my brother used to be very big on oh my god, what's that that physics that where everything doesn't really exist.
String theory.
No, 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 but you're going along the right path. Oh, it has to do with like other dimensions. There's a famous physicist. His name is I believe it's Michio Kaku, I want to say.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
So he writes books on these.
Okay.
Um, and my brother my brother got into this at one point and he gave me a book actually. to talk about all, the different dimensions. And after I got through the first chapter, it pretty much was telling me everything I've ever known or taught to believe doesn't really exist, because it's made up in the minds of man.
Absolutely.
She can come in.
Have you a bit of
Sorry.
company? No, it's fine.
Yeah,
Absolutely. No, that's great. My kids pop in all the time to say hi to everybody in the chat. Well, no, they don't. They do this. Hi, kiddo. How are you? Good to see you again. I know she has no idea who I am. It's okay.
My nanny.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. Oh, I love kids. Yeah, feel free to hang out. We got about another 10 minutes here, and then we'll wrap it up. So if she wants to hang out, that's cool with me. I mean, if you're cool with it. So I'm going to give you one more here.
Yeah.
And this is something that I should have touched on a little bit sooner, but this is why I wanted you on the show, because I knew we could talk like this. And I've already had such a fantastic time. I didn't even realize that we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes already. I really thought we were about at the half-hour mark when I looked over. I was kind of shocked. So you mentioned to me, and one of the first things that my friend had said that you had put forth was that you had some family who worked for the government, and that they were involved in Area 51 or being in Roswell. I know, again, we talked a little bit about that. Could you elaborate on that connection between your family and Area 51?
So my understanding is my grandfather that passed away was in the special ops in the Air Force. So he wasn't there during the time of Roswell. However, in the very early 60s, my grandmother, who was from White Sands, New Mexico area, that's how they met.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
Yeah.
curious.
I'm really not allowed to say too much more, though.
It's okay. I mean, you can tell me whatever you're allowed to say. You know what I mean? We'll take all we can get, really. But okay, so that's if there's nothing more you can share about that, that's fine. We can move on. I'm okay with that. Believe me, 100%. I'll ask you one more, and we'll wrap up after this here. What are your thoughts on doppelgangers? This has been something we've seen a lot lately, and even insofar as people looking for people across the globe that look exactly like them to, meet with them, and they find these odd similarities. Do you believe in the concept of a doppelganger, or do you think it's just maybe a physical anomaly that we all have a double somewhere in the world?
I actually have one.
Do you? Do you? Oh, pray tell.
So the first time I had that experience, I was food shopping at 17 with my mom, and this kid bus and was like, "Hey, how was Framingham jail?" And I'm like, wrong person, dude.
Excuse me. That's funny.
He's like, no, I was talking to you in the court. You were going to jail for a while. And I'm like, wrong person, dude. Never been in trouble. And my mother was like, you definitely have the wrong person. She's never been in trouble. And this kid swore up and down. Now, my name is Cindy, and I've been told that her name is Christina.
Oh, God.
And I have been mistaken for her so many times in my life that they swear to God that she is me. And I've never run into her, but she lives somewhere on the North Shore near me.
That's incredibly amusing to me because we all expect to just kind of live our lives out, and yet there's somebody out there who looks just like you, and they're close enough to you in physical proximity that they're Sorry, not only once, but multiple times are you being mistaken for that person? You poor soul. I'm so sorry. It's again enough to have somebody who looks like you and maybe has similar interests, but for that person to be doing things and people looking at you and saying, "Hey, what's that's just another element altogether."
Right.
So, well, that's very funny. I mean, thank you very much for that. With that being said, I want to let everybody know I'm going to put this into the description at the end of the show. I had not the chance yet, but Cindy Lee here has a wonderful Etsy page that I want to refer everyone to because, come on, everybody loves Etsy. It's a great creative website with so many different people who have so much talent. So I'm gonna shout this out verbally, and then again, I'm gonna put this into the description at the end of the show. Sorry, here we go. It's www.etsy.com, created by DH Designs. I'm gonna say that one more time. It's www.etsy.com, created by DH Designs. Please go and check out her work and what she's done. And if you like it, support her. We even here at DHP would be incredibly grateful for that. And, thank you very much, Cindy. I appreciate you coming on tonight. This has been an incredibly enlightening evening and literally all that I ever hoped for when I asked you to come on the show and you so graciously accepted that invitation. This has been awesome, and I hope you've had fun as well.
Most definitely. We'll have to do it again.
I would more than love to do that. I'll be honest with you. That would be fantastic if we have you back on maybe in another month or so, and you let us know the update and what's going on with you. And I'm sure I'll have more questions, and we can discuss and even get deeper into these topics as the time allows. So, excellent. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience before we wrap things up here?
No, but if you got any theories, let me know.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take you off camera. I will say my proper goodbyes off camera at the end of the show if you have a moment to hang out. If not, and you have to go, I understand that as well. I'll get in touch with you another way. Otherwise, hang out and I'll be back in just a moment. I'm going to end off the show. Okay. Thank you once again for being here. It has been a fantastic and incredible evening with you, Cindy Lee.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that show tonight. This was a very exciting show that I was looking forward to for quite some time. And man, it's just the universe works, man. Synchronicity is an absolute reality. And if you look around and you take the time to pay attention, not to sound like Maury Povich here, but it will change your life and you will find more positive things to be looking at, or you'll find negative things that you can then write and heal within yourself. It's all a reflection, guys. All right. I won't say too much more here. What I want to do say in the lines of the channel, tomorrow night, I have Michelle Gray coming on. She was here for a session with Elisa Medhus for channeling Eric. And we had a fantastic show with that. I'm sure most of you have seen it. But she'll be back on her own tomorrow night, and we'll be doing a one-on-one interview with her. Fantastic medium, clairvoyant, intuitive, and an absolute survivor. I cannot stress that word enough. And you folks will find out why tomorrow night when you tune in. In addition, I have to say it, please like and subscribe to DarkHour Paranormal. I know that there are a lot of you guys listening on the fringe. It really helps the channel if you like the show with the thumbs up. And if you subscribe, that'd be awesome too. I mean, you don't even have to turn on the bell if you don't want to. You just pop in whenever you like. But that really helps us out here just to kind of put that out. Thank you very much for those of you who have and are doing so. Also, I want to give a special shout out to Richie G at GUFON for helping me to create the thumbnail that we put together. You saw it on YouTube. It's not the original one that I posted on Facebook. It's the one that was attached to this show. Fantastic job. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate all your help and what you do here for DarkHour Paranormal. Very, very grateful to you. And last but not least, I have put this together because since the third show, I've had people inquiring about how they can donate to DarkHour Paranormal. Now, as some of you know, you have to have 1,000 subscribers on your channel to do the super chats because people keep coming back and asking me how they can donate, I have included in the description a paypal.me link, and you can go and support the channel that way if you so choose. If you don't, great, thanks. I appreciate you being here. If you do, great, thanks. We're going to build the show even more going forward. So again, thank you everybody for being here this evening. I'm glad that the sound worked out. The last two shows were a little iffy because of some technical difficulties, which I simply can only apologize for. I did work long and hard to make that happen, that we have something better, and Blue Chicken was instrumental in that. So thank you, Blue Chicken. I want to give you a shout out. My moderators, Long Island Bigfoot, Big Cat, and of course, Wreaking Havoc. All three of these guys, most of you know and love. Thank you very much, guys. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 5 o'clock Pacific. I hope you have a wonderful, enchanted, and magical evening. And one day, I'll pace it out so as soon as I say goodbye, we'll have our outros up and ready to go. Just one moment there, folks. This is awesome. I'm not sleeping tonight again. That's one of the things you guys don't see behind the scenes, is that when we do interviews like this and the energy gets so high, I'm in a very little room here. This is a very small space, and it almost feels like it compacts and just continues to bounce off the walls and just energizes me till about 4 a.m. Man, I guess I shouldn't complain. There are other things to worry about, right? Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you all being here, and I will see you tomorrow night. Ciao.